Well, you guys are very, very lucky today because we have a legend in the house. Glenn Vilppu is with us. Glenn, we'll talk more about you and your legendary status in a minute, but what are you going to teach us today?
Well, I thought I would take an really because my whole approach is so contrary to what everybody else does. I thought I would just go through the whole process, basically drawing from imagination, the whole Renaissance approach, the basic tools, the
Wow.
idea that we don't copy, things like that. I'll go,
Okay.
I'll go through
Well,
the
it
whole
sounds
thing.
like a big one. So let's get the show started, and then we'll be right back to you.
It's
Okay.
Art School Live with Eric Rhodes. Now, here's your host, Eric Rhodes.
Make sure you share this. This is a special day. This man, Glenn Vilppu, teaches well, I think at the I'm blanking out now in L.A. at the great school there, and he's also teaches online, and he has been teaching for decades and has taught many of the famous names that you know, and they will probably be tuning in today. It's Art Center is what I was going to say. Anyway, you've got to see his work. It's just absolutely amazing and in the Renaissance style. So he's going to teach you a little bit about his approach and how he does this. And you're not going to want to miss this today. So the great Glenn Vilppu is with us. We have a prize, and that is that we have a winner from yesterday or earlier. Was it yesterday? Anyway, Marjorie Tibbetts in Key Marathon, Florida, is winning the pair of value specs. And I don't know what our prize is for today. I'll have to find out what it is. It seems to be missing. We have a free gift for you, and that is 10 steps to becoming a high-level figure and portrait artist. And if you just want that, it's yours for free at realismlive.com/ebook, realismlive.com/ebook. And you can subscribe to this broadcast. We're just on the verge of getting our 100,000 on YouTube. And if you subscribe on YouTube, we only got a couple more thousand we got to fill in. Then that'll help us and that'll help you because then you'll be notified every time we go live. And also you can follow at Eric Rhodes on Facebook and Instagram. Okay. Now we're going to get right back. Oh, I think I have the prize. Okay. The prize is Fine Art Connoisseur magazine. You're going to get a subscription, and the digital edition, which we've had forever, but now the digital edition, starting with the next issue, has 30% more content. That means all the stuff we couldn't print because we didn't have room in paper, we are now putting in the digital edition. So when you subscribe, most people just get both. They like the print and they like the digital for the extra content, but also because you can, zoom in on the pictures and things and get really high quality. All right. So now we're going to get back to Glenn Vilppu, if we can find him here. And it looks like, Glenn, it looks like your camera has gone dark, your other camera. And it looks like the screen is dark. So I've got it here, but it's not showing
Well,
up. And so it probably went into sleep
okay,
mode.
what I did is just to take and I have to turn the camera over
All right. Well, we're
start
letting
what I
them kind
do.
of resolve that, and we'll keep an eye on that. In the meantime, I want to tell you guys that we have a big event coming up called Watercolor Live. It's coming in January, and it's the 26th through 28th, 3 full days. Plus, there's an optional 4th watercolor beginner day, and we have some of the finest watercolor artists on the earth from all over the world teaching. And this is a worldwide conference, and last year we had a huge number of people, and I think this year we've already got close to that number signed up. And so we want you to sign up. It's going to be really terrific. We'll tell you more about that, but we're waiting for Glenn to get his camera situated. Also, I should mention to you, when we do these broadcasts every day, we're doing them with artists who are kind of working with their iPhones or their home equipment. But when we shoot our Paint Tube TV art instruction courses from Streamline, we have, high quality professional production with major lenses and cameras and close-ups and, really doing it right. So if you want to see how things are done well, go to painttube.tv. You have over 600 top master artists teaching their techniques. We're preserving them forever, and you can find that there. So go to painttube.tv. There we go. It looks like Glenn's camera is back, and we'll see if we can get him in here. Glenn, there you go.
Okay.
All right. Now you can go ahead and start your teaching now.
Okay, but I have to.
Turn
The
your
difficulty
camera
I
on.
was just trying to do is turn the camera so it wasn't it wasn't on me, but now it's on there. So I'm just going to have to. I can't move it around very much. So this is going to have to be. If you can zero in on things, I can't.
Oh, that looks great.
Well, well, it gets small. Okay, let me just take and go at it with the gangbusters here, and I'll draw a little larger.
And if you can talk a little louder, because you're not facing the microphone, you're facing away from the microphone. So if you'll talk a little louder, that'll be helpful.
Okay, so first of all, what I teach is true, really Renaissance drawing. And if you really think about Renaissance drawing, everything started from imagination. So when I start out, it's like drawing from imagination. A lot of times I don't even know what I'm going to start with. So I'll just take and think. Now, the idea, what's different about what I do is that I'm not copying anything.
You're not, so you don't have a reference photo.
I'm sorry.
You don't have a reference photo.
No, I don't have any reference. I don't use reference. Okay, so what I'm doing, and the idea is, and this is an important part of the whole process, is that when you're drawing from imagination, obviously you don't have anything to copy. But what's the important part is drawing is just thinking. So when I'm starting out, I take and I'm trying to sort of visualize an action. Well, when you're doing that, you're actually trying to feel how the figure goes. And then it becomes a matter of using just simple tools to take and communicate or describe the form. And it's form drawing, it's not tonal drawing. Okay. Now, okay, what I've done here, you can see it's pretty straightforward. I've taken and just the basic idea is that I'm leading the eye through the figure to take and try to understand the action that I have in mind. I don't really have anything in mind, but and it's the idea of actually leading. So what you're doing as you're doing this, you're actually composing the lines to lead your eye through the form. And it's actually, you're feeling the eye, you're making the eye move. Well, to do that, it correlates to what's in your head. So as I'm doing the drawing then, and we want to do this three-dimensionally, so basically tools. Now you can look at drawings that go back to Alexander the Great. Look at the tomb of his father, Philip of Macedon, and you see that they were doing three-dimensional figures in perspective and everything else. And you're using basic tools of wrapping line. In other words, when you draw a line over the form, it's giving you a direction. So if I go back up into these figures here, like everything, everybody does it with the head. You come through and you go around and you go over. Okay, that's taking and controlling the direction that you're going. It's telling you which way the head's turned. You're giving information. The next step in that volume, as you're going over the surface of the form, you're containing. So in the matter of containment is just taking and look into the center of a form. And that's containing. Now I can contain as I take and start wrapping over and around. So I'm controlling. So I've got an action, a movement. So as you're building the figure, you're taking and starting out with very, very, very simple volumes. Going over and around the form. Constantly going from one side to the other. But the idea, when you're working with these simple volumes, you have to at the same time be focusing on the action. In other words, I start out this figure going in. I'm really feeling what the body is doing. So I'm coming through and then wrapping around. Now, the simple forms that I apply to it is going over the surface. Now, this is just simple basic elements now. But if you look at in my classes, I can show you examples of Michelangelo, Raphael. It's all basically the same thing. The artists have been using the same basic tools for centuries, thousands of years, literally. You see how I'm taking and just building the form. Okay, so then of course how much you can get out of this depending on your knowledge. So you have to understand anatomy. You've got to take and build. You can't communicate the feelings of a figure and its attitude unless you can take and can control the drawing which is done by taking and working with form. Okay, I'm going to draw a little bit larger. Often I take and do this. This is something I'm constantly working with different materials. So this time, this is a Caran d'Ache watercolor crayon.
Watercolor crayon.
Yeah. Caran d'Ache. Okay, so here I'm just going to take and I'm doing this so I can draw a little larger because I'm not being able to control the camera going in. I usually truck in and start out with my fountain pen, but this will accomplish the same thing. So I'm taking and starting out. Now the idea, this is really a critical part. You have to actually feel how one part of the figure relates to another part of the figure. So I'm going through and consciously thinking of these volumes, coming through, thinking of the center, leading the eye. Now, this as I'm doing this, you can see it's obviously a rhythm. Well, which is a classical rhythm. It's just a means of a tool that we use to take and lead the eye through the figure. It's like a beat in music. It's not the melody. It's just a means of getting the eye to go through the figure. So as I'm doing this, then I'll come through and I'll say, well, all right, the figure here, I'm thinking of its twisting. So now, like I say, I'm using this as a watercolor pencil or a crayon. So I can use this and then coming down, I was coming through, feeling the leg dropping. I can lift the leg up. Look at the drawings of Rubens. You know, all the drawings in the Renaissance painting and drawing is narrative drawing, is storytelling. So it's preoccupied with the concepts of telling a story. So the emotional element in it. We tend to be focused on purely the sort of the mechanics of abstract things, shapes, lines, and tones. Those are all important. But the reality is, it's the communication of the emotion that you take and bring into it. And so,
now, what if somebody watching this does not know how long an arm or a leg should be, or how to figure that out? Is this something that they need to study first, or what do you recommend?
I tell students to draw as much from imagination as they can. You have to, of course, learn your proportions. You got to learn how many head highs the figure is, where's the chord. So as I come through here, now I'm going to take and come into this with a water brush. This is watercolor that I just put down here. So as I come back into this, I take and use this to take and start creating a sense of form.
And are you smearing the marks that you already had down?
Yeah, I'm using that as a resource for things. So now you can see that I'm building that up. Now I've given a plane, I think on front, light side, shadow side. Now this is just a modeling tone. The modeling tone is just the fundamental way that we take and draw, describe form by pushing the sides back. So you can see already I'm taking and bringing in anatomy. I've drawn the rib cage, thinking of the corners here of the thoracic arch, corners of the pelvis. These are landmarks, and it's all part of the thing. So as I'm doing this, then you can see now it's taking on a much more solid quality because I'm thinking of the three-dimensional forms. Now I'm going to go back into this with a another pencil so that you can see. I'm using this is a Caran d'Ache. I take it back. This is the Faber-Castell water soluble, and it's a sanguine. So now as I come back in,
Are you drawing on top of wet paper at this point?
yeah, the paper I'm working on, excuse me, it's a BK Reeves lightweight white, very expensive paper, but it's marvelous to draw. I tell students, in class, if a student draws on newsprint, I won't draw on their page. Because if you're drawing on newsprint, it's just a waste. You're going to have to throw the drawing away. I refer to it as sort of like cat litter. But there you can see, now I'm coming through and I'm really constructing. Now, you have to realize I've been doing this for a long time. So, but I'm actually drawing, as I draw, I'm constantly drawing anatomy. I'm thinking when the clavicle comes up, goes over. I'm going over the surface. Now, I started out with the idea of thinking, okay, you're thinking of the center of the form. Well, we have, as we're working with this, we're getting a you feel the corner of the rib cage pushing out. Well, that's really feeling how it's taking and going. Come down, come through, think of the corner of the pelvis. So I'm looking for the corners of the form. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm using anatomy. And the idea here was the rhythm coming through. So I will take and change, work with forms in the interior to take and create that same sense of movement as I'm going through the figure. Feel the pinch. Animation, we call that squash and stretch. But I learned that 20 years before I ever got involved in animation. So you can see one side to the other. Look at Pontormo. Look at Andrea Del Sarto. I'm constantly using examples. The idea of the rhythm, one of the great guys for doing the rhythm is like a Parmigianino. But also at the same time, you can look at a lot of the moderists, Modigliani, even Raphael, Renoir. So it's constantly, art is based on art. And so as I'm drawing the figure now, see, I'm just going over the surface of the form, constantly thinking about where the anatomy is. Now, the tools I've said, okay, one is lead the eye. Okay, that's just, think of that as a tool. Then you take it and you think, if I go over that surface, I can make that go in any direction I want to. Going around, make it go in, make it come out. Okay, now coming in here, I'm taking and looking at the corners here. Well, that's if you go back and look at Cambiaso, look at Bridgman. And I'm going over across the form, looking at the planes of the head. Well, that goes all the way back to Albert Dürer. And the idea of taking and just pushing the sides back on the form, visualizing the center. Now, working from imagination, you have no limitations. And in fact, if you think about it, is that drawing literally is thinking. All I'm doing now is taking and thinking. And so as I'm thinking this, okay, you have no limitations in what you think. Inside your head, you have absolutely no limits. You can think any damn thing you want. And so as you're building the forms then, and going over these surfaces, you can see it's slowly taking and coming through, but I'm using this thing. So then I'm saying, okay, the next, we've got two tools here. Well, the idea of the box, cambiasso. There's nothing ambiguous about a box. So looking and seeing the corners of the form. So I can emphasize this even more. I'm going to come back in and use into the scale we're working here so you can see a little bit more clearly. So I'm taking and coming through and looking for the corners. I'll even use cast shadows. Cast shadows are great ways to go over the surface of the form. Use core. These are just tools. You can manipulate them. People say, well, what about the light source? Where's the light coming from? Essentially, you can make the light come from wherever you want it to come from. You can take and traditionally the light was upper right-hand corner, two lights. You have a upper right-hand corner direct light and you have a reflected light in the opposite direction. So now I've added a lot more tone to the drawing. So I can come back in and say, now watch as I come through this. I'm doing this a bit more for the camera so that you can see. Now, also another tool is, which I'm using here, is the idea of atmosphere. In other words, I'm bringing tone in between, separating forms as we start building up. Now I can go back into that drawing, and I often, like I say, I'm sort of mixing things up here a bit, but I do a lot of my drawing with the fountain pen. And a fountain pen and a water brush, which are the basic tools that I use all the time. So I can come back into this.
Is it a real thin fountain pen or is it thicker? What do you use? Nib
What?
size.
What kind of pen and what size?
Okay, this is a Namiki Falcon, expensive, but it's the finest point available. Okay, it's Japanese and it's made by Pilot. Now watch what happens here when I've taken this head. I have no particular expression at it. The drawing is going to look different the minute I take and start to give expression. I'm just turning the eyes. And I'm going to take and give her a bit of a smile. And again, the water, since you're working with the pen, it's the ink is water soluble. And it's you can feel the surface of the form going through. Now, some of the other tools I use a lot. I work a lot with the carpenter's pencil. So you can see how we building this thing up. I can take and change arms. I can make arms go anywhere I want. I have no restrictions. The only restrictions you have are in your head. And you shouldn't have any. So, but the tools, okay. So now I'm using here, saying, okay, I'm using a light source, a core. Well, that's just a tool. The core is just the soft edge of a turning form away from the light. The cast shadow is sharp. And we go into a core. But the contrast that you create between the core and the reflected light is what gives the drawing luminosity. So now you can see even the first part of the drawings that I started with are pretty much starting to disappear. So we come through and build. Now, like I say, most of my drawing is drawing from imagination. Actually, I can, as we're doing this here, I can take and show you, I'm going to just take and show you so you can get a broader range of what I do. I have one of my sketchbooks. I've got literally hundreds of sketchbooks. Okay, now here's working with the carpenter's pencil. One of my grandchildren. But these drawings here are for imagination. If we take, and let's just go to the front here. Now these drawings here, this is from imagination, just starting with a pen.
Did you use
So
brown
these
ink
are
on those?
all- Go ahead.
Did you use
What was
brown ink?
Yeah, I use the brand is a UK ink, and it's called, it's a Damien is the
Giamine.
brand, and
Giamine.
it's warm brown.
Turn around the label.
I'm just trying to find the cover here.
Turn to the front.
Oh, here we go. I don't know if you can see that. But I like the color, but you find that there's many different colors I use because it works very well with the fountain pen. So, like
Do
for
you
instance,
prefer
in
a fountain
here,
pen that you
oh, so
dip,
this-
not one that has a cartridge?
what? No, it's to fill it. You fill it. It's a plunger.
All
Yeah,
right.
the pen. It's the most reliable pen. I've had. I have several.
And tell us
and-
again, it's a Pilot Nike.
What?
Tell us the name of the
Namiki.
pen again?
Namkie. No.
I'll type it in Glenn's chat because I have it open.
All right, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So these drawings are for imagination. But I've done exactly the same way. Now here, these were started with the brush. I draw with a brush. Again, I was just thinking of a pose of somebody sitting on a couch turning, but they're from imagination. These are some studies, some trees and stuff. I teach landscape drawing also. This drawing is taking in when I was in a dentist's office or something. I think people sitting around. Here, characters that were at it. We went to a garden. Here's another drawing of my grandson sitting at the table, and that was several rooms away. I was just catching him while he was watching television. But these are drawing, then going from that to carpenter's pencil, capturing the whole scenes of people. So it's a constant play. And the other pencil that I use a lot, and I can take and do something with it, is I can use I use the combinations of water-soluble materials, crayons, ink, and this is a water-soluble soluble pencil. So if I take, and I'm going to draw this a little bit larger because I can see we're pretty far off. So in other words, if I'm taking and blocking something in, this is a 6B, and it's a Stadler Lumograph Aquarelle.
One of the comments says, "This is very liberating."
It's what?
It's very liberating.
Oh yeah, you don't. First thing I tell students in class, there are absolutely no rules, none. All you've got is tools, and then your knowledge that you acquire, you have to study. I mean, you have to learn your
Rules,
anatomy.
tools, not rules.
No rules, just tools, and now I'm taking with coming in because I'm giving it a little bit more of an expression here.
Now, are your sketchbooks the same paper?
No, the sketchbooks are moleskin.
Moleskin, okay.
Yeah, although I used to make my own sketchbooks, but the Moleskine is pretty good because it allows for a certain amount of using a water, but most brands, even Faber-Castell, there's different ones. Now you can see what I've just blocked in, but in doing this, I have this experience and knowledge of all of the structure and planes. Okay, you have to understand the planes. You got to be able to think three-dimensionally. That doesn't mean that I don't consider 2D. When I'm designing and doing the drawings for paintings stuff, I'm taking and I work with both. I take and do an awful lot of my drawing is done on the iPad. But you can't tell any difference between what I do on the iPad to what I do on paper. It's exactly the same. So as I come
Now,
through
if
here,
you're
now,
starting, if you're
exactly.
starting a portrait, if you want to do a portrait for a painting, are you sketching in the same level of detail, or are you doing it differently?
Oh, I want to grab the painting.
Okay, but what was the question, Eric?
If you are creating a portrait, you're going to paint a portrait, are you sketching it in detail, or are you just painting in, sketching in with paint? And what detail level do you put in initially?
Okay, first of all, painting is drawing of the portrait.
Which portrait?
I did yesterday. The painting.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Eleanor's getting a demonstration painting I did yesterday.
All right.
Again, from imagination, but drawing. The painting was done from a drawing I did on my iPad the day before. And it was about an hour and a half. No, it wasn't even an hour, more like an hour and 10 minutes. Okay, so here you can see how I'm taking and developing a thing. Now, this is wet, but this was like an hour. Now, this is drawn, this is painted from one of my drawings that I
It
did
looked
from
like Tony Pro.
What is that?
Who was saying it looks like Tony Pro? I don't know who that
I don't know who that is, but I'm just inventing characters as I go along.
Or Scott Pryor. Yeah.
But it's just, but I am totally anti-academy. Let me explain that. Okay, the academy, the primary element that you're doing when doing an academic drawing is that you're focusing on the tonal qualities and you're capturing the tones and the nuances of the thing. I don't do that. I'm focusing on the form. So so it's a totally contrary approach to taking and doing things. And it's really, okay, for instance, I'm known pretty well for having worked in the animation industry, but I didn't start that until I was 40. I'm a painter. And so I take in the ability to in my own paintings, stuff, they're all done from imagination because I'm more preoccupied and concerned with the composition. It's the organization that I'm interested in. My objects that I'm painting and usually are realistic figures, but the real point of the painting is the aesthetics of the organization, the order that's created. So you can see how you can build with these things. You can take and come through, but you have to know everything I do. I'm constantly drawing anatomy. I'm drawing the structure of the form. So as I'm coming through and building, I'm thinking, where's the corner of the pelvis? Where do we feel the ligaments coming down? Where's the fat pads? How do we feel where the abductors are coming through, and the quadriceps into the patella, and looking for the condyles and going over. So everything is taking, and one of the questions was sort of, how do you deal with proportions and stuff? Well, if you're drawing structure and drawing form, the knowledge of what the forms are and relate to each other helps you to take, but it's also a certain level of eye-hand coordination. So now you can see I've been, how many different materials have I done on this drawing? So I can come through and I can build back in, I can move things around. Now I'm picking up water on the water brush there, on the pens, that's picking up with the pencil. You have to have fun. You don't have fun doing it. I don't know why you're doing it.
Well, that's why we're here.
Yeah. You have to enjoy the process that you're going through. Anyway, so as I'm doing the drawing, then you can see it's taking on a whole different dimension. Like I said, I'm taking, and I can bleed things out. I can think of the atmosphere. Well, that atmospheric thing like that, in Italian, we talk about all this, light and dark patterns and stuff. Well, the Greeks were already doing that 1,000 years before. It's not nothing new. Da Vinci didn't invent it. Guys have been doing that. In fact, some of the great Greek artists were famous for taking and being able to take and give the sense of realism. And so we don't have a lot of examples of their work, but on the frescoes and stuff that have survived, you can see it. It's very realistic, a very, very simple understanding of the basic tools that we come through. So you can take and constantly build on the forms. Okay, how are we doing here?
Oh, you're doing a great job. I think, if you want to move on to something else for a minute, otherwise I think we've got the idea. It's fabulous.
Okay, I do the one point is, okay, I just showed you a painting, but a painting is nothing but drawing with pigment. It's drawing, painting is drawing. It's all drawing. But drawing, I keep reminding, drawing is just thinking. And that's what allows artists to take and fantasize, to take and make comic books, do graphic novels, do animation. It's all done from imagination. But you have to be able to control in diagram form. And the basic tools, that's what I teach. In a way, I'm a nuts and bolts teacher. And I teach tools. How do you do it? And art sort of, I'm subversive, that sort of sneaks in. But anyway, any other questions?
I don't think so. You might want to just go through for people who might be struggling with this in terms of proportions, maybe just give a touch base on proportions.
Sure. Okay. Well, in other words, when you're starting out, the basic element that they start with is that and this is part of its anatomy. Okay. But if you take the most simple thing to start with, and proportions, remember, proportions are a tool. Fashion figures are different than cartoon figures. The proportions are used to create an experience. Okay, so the most simple thing is to take, like I'm starting out through here. Say if I start out, say, well, okay, here, a point, here, pubic arch. Okay, the head will go into the pubic arch 4 times. Okay, but the critical part then, as you're going through that, now as I'm going through the proportions, and I'm thinking, okay, the eyes are exactly in the center. Brow line, bottom of the nose. Okay, the next thing is pit of the neck. So right now, then, as I'm doing, this is part of my teaching, is that we have basic landmarks. So like on up here, okay, got the eyes are in the center, head, bottom of the nose, brow halfway, bottom of the nose to the chin, bottom of the lower lip is halfway. Distance from the bottom of the nose to the top of the head is the pit of the neck. The distance from the pit of the neck to the top of the head is the bottom of the 10th rib. Okay, but these are anatomical points. Now, these anatomical points correspond with the corners of, like, say, a box, how we take and create the idea of a movement In other words, for instance, I'm going back through here. I can take in, you can see that from here, as I just take and go through, and I starting to say, well, okay, the pit of the neck here, okay, well, that's going to the bottom of the 10th rib. And then I'm taking control. I'm drawing form. I'm literally drawing the rib cage. Sternum is halfway between the pit of the neck to the sternum to the 10th rib. Okay, now the idea of the proportions, these are, the clavicle is the same distance. We're talking about the distance from the top of the head to the bottom of the nose. Well, your clavicle is the same distance. Okay, elbows come to the waist, and we're talking in proportion. We come down and we start to feel how these distances now. We start to take and pull through, and you're thinking, well, we have to look for the corner of the pelvis. Well, that's the same distances from the sternum, the bottom of the nose, top of the head, coming through. And half of that then is going to take in pubic arch. So I'm a little low here to start with. But so I'm constantly where you trochanter, pubic arch. So the proportions are always related to specific anatomical points, which are part of the things that we use to take and describe form. So you need to learn that. And everybody has something that they take and do that's off. I tend to make forearms a little too long. So I'm constantly adjusting that. And so you're taking and correcting things and you're changing things all the time. And that's one of the things you notice that you, in the drawing that I've done here, all of those lines I started with have disappeared. You can't see them. They're gone.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So that
Without erasing.
I don't use an eraser.
I know. Pretty
And
amazing.
it's a constant adjusting and changing and playing with it. Okay.
So there were a couple of questions people posted in the chat. Do you see this one? Did you do Did you do a lot of life drawing, and therefore you have a good reference library? We'll read the question out loud.
Yes. No, I have done. Okay, I'm 86 years old. I started drawing from the model, literally. And Saturday, when I was in high school, I started drawing from the model in about 1953. So I was taking and I started teaching drawing and stuff when I was in 1961. So I've been doing this forever. There's rarely a day that goes by that I'm not taking and drawing. Whether it's taking and working out compositional sketches, drawing like grandchildren, you have to draw. If you don't know it, you can't. You have to learn it. And all of the artists of the past, they always have one suggestion. Apelles, the famous Greek artist who did a portrait of Alexander the Great, said, "Never a day without a line." And Michelangelo, somebody asked him, he said, "Well, what excuse? Not excuse? What's suggestion?" And his one word answer was draw. And that's about it. Yeah.
You could mention your new drawing manual edition.
Oh yeah, I have a new drawing manual where I go through all of this.
Awesome. How do we find it?
If you email through Glenn's website, it's just being printed, so we don't have available yet. But if you go to vilppuacademy.com and send me a message, then I'll let people know when it's available. It should be really soon.
It's literally, it is a manual. I go from step one all the way through to taking anatomy and I'm going into everything. And it was
All
something.
right. Well, you got to be careful because this is such a big group that you're going to sell thousands of books.
That would be a good thing.
Yeah.
The Dreamliners will turn it into a book club.
You can see where I'm a sort of a thorn in the side to Academy people because I'm totally contrary to them. I'm literally the opposite. And
so you don't dig the whole drawing from casts thing?
No, I don't do any of that.
Yeah.
None.
All right. Well, why don't you come back on camera so everybody can meet you?
I get a kick out of Ruben. So when he was a young artist, and he went to Rome and visited friends who were in the different academies and stuff. Now he was already doing quite a bit, and he came back and he went from one academy to another where everybody was doing his stuff, and he came back and he said, "One day is enough." But you have to study. And I mean, you have to train your eye. You got to work on it. You got to study. Like I just literally yesterday, I was going through one of my anatomy books, and all of a sudden I realized something. I didn't really understand that thing very clearly that I've been talking about and lecturing on. And I had to go back in, and I started realizing, I don't know if everybody talks about, okay, you got your quadriceps come down, they go common tendon coming down over the patella. But they actually don't go over the patella. You have the rectus femoris comes to the top of the patella, but the vastus lateralis actually is to the lateral side of the patella. And the vastus, anyway, I'm always learning something. I look at something and I said, oh, gee, how did I forget that? Or how did I not
I think
learn
we've
it?
all learned a lot today. This has been fabulous.
They've said they've all learned a lot today. It was fabulous. People on the chat said it was their favorite demo.
Well, this is literally what I do constantly on my online classes. We have a chat, 2-hour chat every week, and I also students send the drawings. I go over the drawings on my iPad and build them up. But we have a chat where people can ask questions, anything, and I'm demonstrating and I'm doing the thing constantly. So anyway, but check out the Vilppu Academy.
All right, we're going to do that. Glenn, why don't you come back on camera real quick and we'll say goodbye.
Okay, here I am.
Okay.
You have your hand.
I got my hand over there.
All right. Now we got two different views of you here, which is perfect.
One of the messy studio.
Yeah, you get that the mess of the studio. You got racks of paintings hanging high all over stacked. And this is just part
give us a little view. Give us a little view of your studio. Give us a little tour. With
this is only part of it.
We'll show the skulls up there.
Okay, up here you can see. Yeah, I don't know if you can see this. There's a whole rack of skulls up there.
Go closer.
You can see it. All the different skulls. I've got a skeleton over here stuck behind. You can see that just the head of the skeleton.
Sorry, too messy. We would have cleaned up, but here. Bookshelves. Lots and lots of books all over.
But this is
I love it.
Other part of the house, I have a large easel set up for
large
things.
And another bookshelf that takes up a whole wall. Oops,
well, you don't have enough room for an easel in your studio. You got so much stuff.
That's true.
Well, I have a working space here of about 3 square feet.
The living room is a nicer room. We should have broadcast from there.
But it is, you have to have fun doing it.
Yeah, well, we love studio spaces, and it's nice to see where you work. Glenn, this has been fabulous. We all learned a lot today. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, you take care.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Our guest today was Glenn Vilppu, and what a treat. I've been drawing and painting for, 60 years, something like that, 70 years. So what a treat it has been today. And make sure you go to his website, get his new book. We get nothing out of that, but we want to share. We want to help others. And so check that out. We put the link in the chat. I want to remind you guys, we have Watercolor Live is coming up, and that's in January. And if you don't paint in watercolor, actually, what Glenn did today, a lot of that was watercolor. It's just a drawing with watercolor. So it might be something that would be helpful to you. Just take a look at this real quickly. one of the best things for me on these events, we just wrapped up Realism Live, and it was so wonderful seeing where people started and where they ended up. The drawings and paintings that they were doing by the end of the week were light years ahead of where they started. And then, they keep coming back and getting better and better. So it's fun. Anyway, check it out, watercolorlive.com. Again, thanks to Glenn Vilppu today. Fabulous. Make sure to check out his website and get his new book, which will be, just send them an email and they'll get it for you. And thank you for watching. I'm Eric Rhodes, publisher of Fine Art Connoisseur and Plein Air Magazine. Glenn, I'm going to come see you in LA and we'll do some drawing together. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.